So once again, welcome everyone to the third MuleSoft Meetup of Calicut community group. So we're really happy to have you all here on a weekend. I can see lots of muleys and techies in the member list. Nice to see you guys. So we are going to have a very interesting topic today by a very popular speaker, Patryk Bandurski. Welcome, Patryk. And so before we go to the topic, let's see the safe harbor statement for the meetup. So I'll just read it out. I'm sure you guys know this already. So both the speaker and the host are organizing this meetup in individual capacity only. We are not representing our companies here. The presentation is strictly for learning purpose only. Organizer or presenter do not hold any responsibility that same solution will work for your business requirements. This presentation is not meant for any promotional activities. Yeah, so that's the safe harbor statements. Now, about the organizers, I'll just give a brief intro about myself. I'm the moderator for this meetup. Myself, Fatima Farsana. I'm from NJC Labs. I'm currently working in NJC Labs as an integration developer. I have an experience of around 2 years, and I'm from Kerala, India. And my co-host for the day is John Matthew on Teams on.
Hey, thank you. Thank you, Fatima. So, hi everyone. Thank you everyone for joining once again. So, I'm John Matthew Phillips. So, I'm also working at NJC Labs as an integration developer, and I've been associated with NJC for the last 2 years. And I'm also the community leader of Calicut Group Kerala. And yes, and I'm very happy to see you all today on a Saturday, just like what Fatima said. And I also want to, express my sincere gratitude to Patryk because Patryk was so generous and eager to accept this right away once I approached him. So thank you, Patryk, from my side. Yeah. So looking forward to the session, guys. Yep. Thank you, Fatima. Thank you.
Thanks, John. So before we get into the agenda, yeah. So yeah. I would like to talk about the survey. I'm sure you guys might be already aware of this. MuleSoft survey is going on. It started on August 23rd. So I'd like to bring your attention to that now. It is going to help MuleSoft make their content more better and awesome. So I encourage everyone to fill the survey before it ends on September 20th. I'll put the link in the chats, and towards the end of the session, maybe you guys can fill it up. Okay, so let's go to the agenda. So as said earlier, we are having a very interesting topic today on load balancers. We all might be knowing about it already. We are going to cover shared load balancer, dedicated load balancer, and its various concepts. We're also going to cover some topics or concepts on WebSockets, and also a very interactive demo based on that. Towards the end, we are also going to have a trivia quiz as usual, where we select 3 winners to be eligible for training course from MuleSoft, and also a voucher after successful completion of the training. And during the session, for any doubts and queries, please share the same in the Q&A session. We'll take them in between. Yeah, so that's it. And now, and also let me take this moment again to welcome and thank Patryk, who is the MuleSoft Ambassador. I'm sure you guys already know him. Patryk is based out of Poland and also meetup leader of Warsaw. So let me hand over to Patryk. Patryk, I'll stop sharing. You can speak now.
Sure. Thanks, and thanks for this warm welcome. Actually, let me just try to share my screen. Sure. Let me know if you can see it. Can you see my screen?
Yes, Patryk.
Great. So maybe I first introduce myself for those of you who do not know me. My name is Patryk Bandurski. I am a MuleSoft Ambassador, and as Fatima said, as well, MuleSoft leader for Warsaw MuleSoft leader. I work with MuleSoft products for many years right now. It's over 8 years, maybe now. I do not count it already, so many years. I'm also a subject matter expert for integration topics at PwC Poland, and I as well write articles on my personal blog, ambassadorpatryk.com, about integration, MuleSoft integration topics. So then let's get started. Today I'm going to tell you the differences between shared load balancer and dedicated load balancer. A lot of the big part of this session will be demo based. So I will briefly tell you the theoretical stuff on this, my tips and tricks, and the rest of this part will be on the my actual environment where we've got the dedicated load balancer to play with. So let's start with the shared load balancer, which is a default capability of endpoint platform. It is available to everyone actually. So if you create your trial account, shared load balancer is already there for you. So we've got the Cloud Hub, we've got our shared load balancer, and we've got application deployed on the shared load balancer on the workers. So we can deploy them in the shared worker cloud. So so we've got here a bunch of application names. And right now, let's imagine that we would like to call our API that is deployed on endpoint on the Cloud Hub. So what can we do? Of course, we will, by default, we call it via shared load balancer. The link at the top that appears right now structure is very similar anywhere. So the first is the application name that you give in the runtime manager, then the region where it is deployed, as you can pick it up from the list. The regions are based on as the cloud is deployed in AWS. So you can pick the regions as well from there. And this URI is actually displayed as a default one when you deploy your application runtime manager. This is the link that the runtime manager presents to you, so you can share it with the consumers or use it internally. I will show you this briefly in a minute. So this is the default view. But we can, of course, bypass shared load balancer. No one said that we need to connect via it, of course. So we can go directly to our APIs by just appending mule-worker-, and the rest is the same. Of course, here is the small difference in this. Not only we need to provide the MuleSoft worker, but also need to provide the port under which your application is deployed. That's why here is the port unlisted. What ports should it be? Shouldn't be the 80 or 443 for HTTPS traffic? No. For direct access, we have a different ports that are set up by hard-coded by the platform. It's 8081 and 8082. That must have to be remembered. Usually when you configure your application and you deploy them on Cloud Hub, you either embed this value, 8081, 8082, or just HTTP port variable or HTTPS port variable. But the difference for the direct contact unit provide the internal ports, but via shared load balancer, you do not need to provide the port numbers. They are 80 and 443 for HTTPS traffic. The translation is happening under the hood. So if it happens that you try to deploy your application under different port, let's say 8443, something different, you won't be able to reach this API via shared load balancer. It won't just work. It will try to move it to 8081. So let's move to a slightly different part, still related to shared load balancer. On the previous slide, I showed you that we were on the shared cloud, but you can imagine that you have a virtual private cloud, which is a shortcut for VPC, where you can deploy your application. So we've got this private cloud. You, as the owner, you can set up private IP ranges that will be given to each application deployed on your cloud. And once again, we've got our shared load balancer case. And as I said, here is the VPC. That's the mark that you should. If you have a VPC, then you can then you can secure all your APIs to be within one IP range. The other part of this VPC is Firewall. The Firewall will allow traffic based on some sort of whitelisting. You need to provide IP ranges from where we can connect to port 8081, 8082, or the internal ones, like an 8091, 8092. I will tell you the difference in a moment. But the pretty important stuff is that we're using virtual private cloud, a firewall rule, so we can secure access to our cloud. So, what are the ports? Everything that is deployed internally, and it will be huge hint for working with dedicated load balancer, is deployed in slightly different HTTP ports. Take a look at this. It's 8091, and for HTTPS 8092. This differentiates the level of access. If we meant for publicly available, not in an internal private worker cloud, it's 8082 and 8081, as I show you on the previous slide. And those are translated from shared load balancer from 80 is to this one, and 443 for HTTP traffic is translated under the hood for this one. So you need to bear that in mind. So let's see how to connect, how looks the connection to such service. So the URL is the same, no difference at all whatsoever. Of course, under the hood shared load balancer knows, okay, I need to connect to via this firewall rule and then to application name. So this is done, and the translation of the ports is happening as well. But of course, we can bypass this like we using this previously. The URL is exactly the same. However, at the end, you need to provide a port, which is one of those two. So here is small difference that you should be taken aware. These are some small nuances that can be missed, and you may be wondering then why my application is not working, why I cannot reach it. It's happens a couple of times for me, so I've been aware of those differences. But let's come back to this topic. Once we reach the firewall and we passed all the security, we pass the rules, which are very straightforward. It's allow listing, so if you can connect from all of the world or from some IP ranges, then we reach our application. Plain and simple, I would say. How it looks with dedicated load balancer. Dedicated load balancer, of course, just the word of introduction, is something that is not given you as a default one, like shared load balancer. You need your customer needs to purchase this feature, dedicated load balancer, to have this on the endpoint platform. There are a couple of differences that are related to the traffic that is traversing through DLBs. So let's see. At the beginning, we've got our private cloud. So like you saw this on the previous slide, it means that this is a VPC with all our applications deployed there. Let's see there. And now we've got dedicated load balancer. The first thing to notice is that this dedicated load balancer sits within our VPC. It's not outside like shared load balancer, which were sitting somewhere outside. It's within. So this is the first thing to notice, actually, that it's everything in our VPC. Then, as it is VPC, it has firewall rules that are enabled. And like previously, on the previous slide related to connectivity within VPC, here are the same ports, 8091. So this is this you should remember, and 8892 for HTTPS traffic. So let's see how the call will look like from the internet. Imagine that the consumer would like to consume our API. So the URL right now is kind of different. there is a domain that MuleSoft provides for every dedicated load balancer. So it's lb.endpointdns.net. At the beginning, we see is a placeholder for every name. This is actually the name that you give to your dedicated load balancer when you create it. So it can be your company name, for example. Usually it's company name, actually. Then this is the part of the URL. Of course, remember that we need to remember that it must be worldwide unique. So if it happens, someone used this, we need to make some different name in order to make it work. At the end of this URL, we have the slash and the path part when we've got the app name. This is a bigger topic. I will cover this in a couple of slides more, but by the default, we can provide here the application name. So for example, if I deployed my application under name app-name, I should provide this name here after the slash. And the routing will be done by the dedicated load balancer. So when we've got this application name, dedicated load balancer does some mapping rules, and it translates this invocation into our application name that can be invoked within this VPC. So we have here at the beginning, but as I said, more details about this I will give you in a moment. But let's see how it from the big picture overview how it works. So we've got here the application name at the end, and it's translated and it is put in the application name here. And then .region is appended based on the region where the application is deployed and the Cloud Hub IO. So if you remember, this URL is exactly one that the Shotgun load balancer is using. And at the end, we've got here translation to mule-worker-internal. So take a look, there is one difference. There is the internal prefix at that as well. That means that we will be connecting to application via its private IP address. What private IP address? Private IP address that is given within this VPC. And then, after this, of course, the pattern is the same. Application name .region.cloudhub.io and the port. And the port is 8191 or 8092, depending on the protocol which you've chosen. So, dedicated load balancer does those transformations. They can be more complex. This is a pretty straightforward mapping rule. He provided like one-to-one mapping. Of course, we can bypass this dedicated load balancer as usual, like with Shotgun balancer. We can reach application directly. So if you take a look at the URL here, so the mule-worker-application name, remember, here we do not provide internal part as we need to connect via public IP address. We are outside of the network. That's why here we do not have internal prefix and the application name, region, Cloud Hub IO, etc. And of course, we need to pass those firewall rules. But from the perspective of why we have dedicated load balancer, it doesn't make sense at all to give the direct access to API. That's why we should disable this traffic and configure that way URLs. Configure firewall rules so it won't allow public access from the internet into this VPC. It should be directly via dedicated load balancer. Yeah, it's like a very straightforward setup. We just configure that port 8091, 8092 is reachable only from within the VPC. There is a drop-down, simple drop-down. So you saw right now the patterns, that connectivity patterns, that they are different via shared and dedicated load balancer. I will briefly go through those. Through of them. I gave them as we gave them as a bullet points on the slide, so we can read them through later on. But what are the shared load balancer capabilities? It's, as I said, the default load balancer that is available to everyone. It's out of the box. It's multi-tenant. It provides basic TCP load balancing, and as it is under a CloudHub.io domain, we cannot make install different certificates if you would like to present our company certificate, which is common scenarios. Companies would like to enable their APIs under their own domains. So no domains are allowed for shared load balancer. CloudHub.io, and that's all. We can just work with this. You should bear in mind that it has some basic rate limiting enabled. It works for majority of cases, but you should bear that in mind, that it's working to 100 transactions per second. If you exceed this, you will receive information that the service is unavailable. Plain and simple. If such case occur, you need to think about providing rate limiting policy on your API or purchasing dedicated load balancer. Those two cases, I would say. And of course, ports that I depicted for shared load balancer, it's 8082 and 8081. Dedicated load balancer is most sophisticated solution, which sits within your VPC as I show you this on the diagram a moment ago. It provides URL translation capabilities, so we can hide complexity of application pattern naming. So but I will show you this in a moment. We can configure here our custom domain, so we can expose APIs using company hostname, and as a result, as we own, or the customers of course owns the domain, we can upload certificates of the customer, so that the API will be not only on the domain presented, but with the valid certificate in it. And we can enable the feature that I like, and I think that in many of the projects that I've been working on, it's heavily used. It's two-way TLS configuration that enables secure communication between two APIs. Okay. So let me move to the next slide. Okay, this slide is about custom domain names. I will right now switch to endpoint platform, and I will show you this on the work. I cannot, of course, present, unfortunately, I cannot present to you how to set it up as and do it at the demo, actually, as providing the Cname record, which is needed to expose your API under your own domain, can take from 2 hours up to 24 hours. So we do not have much that time, unfortunately. So I will show you how it is configured on my custom domain. And as well, I've provided 2 more slides about mapping rules. I won't come back here. It just presented as a slide that that will be later for you to follow along, but I will show you this working on the real-life environment. Okay, so I've got already set up this on the endpoint platform. Let me log in here. Okay, refresh the page to see if I'm here. Great. So let me go to Runtime Manager, as everything sits there. Not our applications and our load balancers that are on the left-hand side. Just give me a shout if it's readable, as I've got a big resolution on the screen. Is it clear what is in the screen? Can you read it good? Okay, great. Great. It's always better to confirm if it is not too small. So I've got a couple of applications. We've got an application that we'll be working on in a moment, but let me go to the load balancer stuff. So I've created already one load balancer with API PB. So this is the name that must be unique across the world. Yeah, and the default domain name that is given to every dedicated load balancer. And associated VPC. As you remember, it's needed to be connected together. We can connect to our API under this address. It will always work, but I want to show you how it works when we have a main domain. I've got blog ambassadorpatryk.com, I own the domain, so I can do the subdomains like test.ambassadorpatryk.com for testing purposes. So I've done this. In order to do this, you need to first add the certificate to your domain name. And how does it look? If you could click this, it will look similar to this. So at the top, we've got the TLS server certificates. This is the part that you need to provide certificate to your domain that will be presented to the consumers. It's in other words, this is the certificate that someone will see if it clicks on the this padlock. So this is this certificate to the consumer. So this is just the public certificate that will be presented to him, her. And you need to provide here both public key and private key. They both need to be in the PEM format. PEM format actually is a simple text file where you can see the content of the public key, of course, in base 64 encoded. One thing to notice, when I was working with this, I was not aware why I could not upload my public key. I've received some peculiar errors, guys. And it turned out that my extensions was wrong. Although it was a PEM file, I received information, we cannot upload this, sorry. So it turned out that the extension of the file is important. You need to give the end at the end .pem, otherwise it won't work. Just small tip for you if you happen to see such a weird case. That works for public and private key. Down below we will come to this in a moment. So this is a 2LS configuration and mapping rules, but this is in a moment. So this was the first part that I needed to configure to work to expose my dedicated load balancer under custom vanity domain name, which customers love. Actually love. They don't. If they do have such, they prefer to connect to their own domains. And I meant that we not only need to configure here the certificates that will be enabled, but we also need to configure DNS record. There is a couple of DNS records. I won't dig into the details, but here the only one of them is important. It's called Cname. Cname is the translation of the domains between each other. It's like we say we would like to if we connect under if we type in the browser test.ambassadorpatryk.com, I would like to be redirected to API PBLB endpoint DNS. Fair as plain and simple. I will show you this as this depends based on the platform that you are using. It's on my case it's in Polish, but I will just give you a brief translation. I couldn't change this in English actually. So this depends on where it's usually done by the clients, customers, but I think some of them may come back to you. Sorry, I do not know how to do it. Can you give me a hand? So you should be aware how to configure Cname record. So there are two parameters that are important. The my domain name, that customer domain name, it can be company name. Then we need to specify type of the record, which is a Cname, nothing different, Cname. We can set time to live of this record to 1 hour, like I did. It does not matter, it's just the time when it is refreshed, but when you set it up once, it does not actually matter, as it's rarely is changing. So it's firm and confirmed translation. And at the end, the value of this Cname record, the value one, is my dedicated load balancer name. Yeah, and after you this configuration done, remember, wait up to 24 hours. It needs to spread across the world, across all the domain names. So if something does not work at the beginning, do not worry. it may take a couple of hours. So patience, patience, patience. I know that from my experience when we deployed this and it was not working, and we were wondering why it's not working as the Cname records is there. I'm not that proficient with networking stuff like DNS records, so I then learned that it will pre-populate on the world in more than 5 minutes. So this is how we configure vanity domain names that customers would like to enable. Why, you may be wondering, why I have here 2 certificate names. The first, you need to specify one of the default. You can have here as many certificates, and in other words, as many domain names, vanity domain names as you like. You can imagine that some of the customers has some brand names, and then they would like to enable APIs under some different brand names as well. No worries, we can do this. Just create new certificates, do the same stuff, plain and simple. We can even have certificates dedicated to environments, or we can handle all the MuleSoft environments using one certificate. Usually, I found the cases on the projects that the customer provided 2 certificates, 2 domains, one for production purposes and one for all non-production environments, so dev, SID, UAT, pre-prod, etc. That's the usual case, but it can be different. We can play with this. It's very extendable, I would say. Okay, so this is how to configure our vanity domain name. Let me then move to another exciting part, which is security that gives us this DLB in hand. When we use shared load balancer, we cannot set up to ATLS. It's actually not possible. We cannot do this. We can do it here. And I will present you this in a moment, how to configure. But before this, I would like to present you the simple application that I've deployed, and we will be working with it. So actually, this I cannot make bigger. Either I do not know how to do it in Studio. We've got Salesforce Experience API. It's not RAM-based. It's very simplistic application that enables one endpoint under /API v1/ambassadors, and it returns the list of MuleSoft ambassadors. Plain and simple. We've got just one global configuration there, which is HTTP listener traffic, and it is right now under HTTPS protocol enabled and with port 8082. Remember, I set it up so it is publicly available. As it is deployed right now, I should be able to reach it. So let me do this. I said that I will show it to you. When you click your API on API Manager, you will receive at the top the domain to your application, and this domain from shared load balancer. So one other stuff, if you still have dedicated load balancer, it won't appear here. You will here have a link to shared load balancer. So let me go to Postman, the tool that I use to test my APIs, but you could pick whatever you like. So let me just add, it is enabled under HTTPS. This is the domain that I copied, and I show you that it is enabled under API v1 ambassadors. So let me click enter, and amazing surprise for me as I deployed it yesterday. It works. So we received 200 OK status with a certificate from CloudHub.io, as this is shared load balancer, to also know my certificates and the list of ambassadors. Okay, the question. I will just come back to AP. We need to make some amendment here, so our application will be reachable via dedicated load balancer. We need to enable this traffic. Can you say me what port number I need to set up? or write it. I will move to the, where is our call? Can you tell me in the chat, what port number should I specify? Great. Yeah, that's the answer that I was looking for. Thanks. It's a great answer. We need to change it to 8092 in order to work. So I change it. Let me click OK. We will make a simple, quick redeployment. Right now, we are what we are performing, what we are testing. We are moving from shared load balancer into the dedicated load balancer. I will show you just how the progression goes. How to go from shared load balancer to dedicated load balancer. Okay, I set port 8092. Let me just deploy the application. I will use for this Anypoint Studio, Anypoint Platform, deploy to Cloud Hub. Very easy stuff. Very easy stuff. If you are, you may receive here the window to log into your Anypoint platform, but I've got credentials saved for 15 days, so I should not add it. Application already exists, so we will redeploy it. It will happen pretty quickly as it is simple application. Nothing exciting happening there. Let me close the window. You can see right now that it's queued and it is deploying.
Patrick, we have a question from Prabhakaran. So,
oh, and I've been noted. Yes, sure. What's the question?
So even if we have dedicated load balancer, we can access the application from shared load balancer.
Yes. That was the question?
Yeah, that was the question.
Yes, we can access it via shared load balancer, or we can, as I said on the slide, we should block that kind of access using the VPC configuration. Right now, for me, it worked, as I did not block it to show the transition from shared load balancer to dedicated one. So if you go to your VPC, go to your firewall rules, and you should block those accesses, HTTP port 8081 and 92 to local VPC. That way, no one will be able to access via shared load balancer or direct access links. And this should be done once you configure fully your dedicated load balancer and your application. Then block the access. It does not make sense to enable your APIs via anything different than dedicated load balancer. I hope that it answered the questions. I cannot see the chat. Yeah?
Yes. Thanks,
Great.
Patrick.
No worries. Okay, our application should be already up and running. Yeah, and it is. So let me go back to Anypoint, to Postman. And let me try to call the old path. As I said, what we should have expected. Let me click send. Oh no, it does not work. It does not work right now as I changed the port to 8091. As I remember, shared load balancer is translating only to 8082. That's why we were not able to call this. We received file to bad gateway. Okay, so let's close this down. So as it is no longer works, we should be able to reach to this API via shared load balancer. How to let's construct the API. I will use the default mapping, so we will put full application name. Let me copy this domain. This is the domain under which we have our dedicated load balancer, so HTTPS. And then we do not need to provide port. Okay, I got already the path pre-filled as I know how it works. So we can copy the application name. As remember, this is the default behavior. So we append this at the end, and we need to provide the rest of our path from the application. You remember there was API in the listener configured with V1 and ambassadors. I will just click this one, I won't type it again. And let me click, let's see if it will work. Oh yeah, that gateway. That's not what I wanted to show you. So let's see what went wrong. We can configure it. We are connecting the. Which one should I take a look, guys? This is good from the perspective of debugging. If I'm connecting to anypointdns.net and not under the test ambassadors Patryk, we need to take a look at the default one. To this one is the default one connected, so we need to go to this rule. Okay, we can see. I will dig into the details on this rule, mapping rules. Just one thing that's come up. You remember under what port I exposed my application? It was HTTPS. Take a look here. The mapping rule says we should expect our application under port HTTP. That's wrong. I'm not sure if it is the issue with my platform, but I cannot change it here to HTTPS. That's why I will just remove it and add it again, okay? Let me go here, application. I will tell more about those rules in a moment, but that's just for the purpose of debugging. So if something went wrong, you will receive something is wrong with your rules. Definitely, you need to take a look if the applications are configured correctly. Okay, so we've got right now application. We need to wait a moment. Actually, redeployment of load balancer is pretty quick. As you can see, I've got 2 workers, and so it's happening pretty quickly. It's up to 30 seconds, I would say, to set up new instances of the load balancer with the new configuration. As every change we make here, it will make to redeploy our dedicated load balancers. Bear that in mind. So it won't work at just like that. But okay, but it works now. I said it's pretty quick, but not instantly. So you can see right now I'm able to call our API. I do not provide anything, and I would like to secure my API. Secure API in what way? To using 2ATLS. Why to use 2ATLS? We can ensure that the connectivity is secure between those 2 parties, so my API and the consumer, as they are exchanging well-known for them certificates. Of course, they do not need to be CA signed certificates, at least for the client certificates. So we can use self-sign, and I will use self-sign certificates as I did not purchase the signed certificate by CA. So we will see how it works. And usually customers and third parties decide to use this part, especially financial services. For example, in last of the project, there was a webhook from the WorldPay application, WorldPay, which never mind what this application does, but it's a payment notification of the progress of the payment. And we would like to receive this. And we needed to make it really secure. No false traffic was allowed there whatsoever. So we embedded 2ATLS, and as well, those third party require such configuration. So you may encounter this already in your dev experience. But it's a fairly case in in my last projects, a couple of my last projects. So let me configure such 2-way TLS. So what we need first, client certificate. Client certificate is something that will be vendor giving you. So they will give you a public certificate. I will show you how to configure such certificate as it is, from my perspective, valuable information, how to do it. And the next step, I always generate as well. If I enable 2ATLS for customer, I enable it to my MuleSoft developers team, so we can test the service. Of course, after we've done, we remove our certificates, but we embed it as well. So as we do not have the certificate from the customer to work with. I use Keystore Explorer tool. You can pick whatever you like tool. You may use the command line. I do not use them as I do not like to remember those nifty commands, so I use the GUI. And this is a free tool that works in majority of cases and helps me to keep my key stores and trusters for application well. I will use the default configuration PKCS, and this is for some time suggested as well for MuleSoft to use in the key stores and trusters. I can click wherever here I want and generate key pairs. I leave the value of the key as default, and I've got my key already here for 1 year long. I will give 2 extra values here. I configure the common name. It does not need to the domain name. We are just representing the customer. Let's say that this is custom certificates of the Salesforce team, dev Salesforce. I will just give 1 extra country, make it okay. Okay. Let's call it dev Salesforce. I will secure it with password, very secure password. Mule 1234. Do not follow my leads. Yeah, let me save the file. Once again, Mule 1234, Mule 134, and I will save this file as dev. Actually, I think, oh yeah, dev Salesforce P12. So we've got our key store right now saved. Let me move to my ambassadors. Sorry, not ambassadors, but to Mule DLB. Okay, how to configure client certificates. You've noticed it already, as it is not that big, and there is not much to configure here. Client certificates. We can push here client certificate as a PEM file. So, what part to request from the client? Let me go back to this certificate. We need to, as we've got private key, public key, and the certificate. We just need the certificate. Remember this one, as it is a common mistake. So I can export here certificate chain. I use the default configuration and the PEM file. And remember to add PEM at the end, otherwise it will fail to load it to the load balancer. So let me pick choose. No, not this one, DLB. Oh yeah, and it is. Dev Salesforce serve PEM. And we configure this as a mandatory. Or in other words, be careful here, as if you set it up as mandatory, every application that will try to connect through your dedicated load balancer will be required to provide this certificate. So do it wisely, or you can make it optional. But for now, I will make it mandatory. And I will save this. Not this one, sorry. One word for you. If you put this as an optional one, the dedicated load balancer still validates your certificates or not. And the dedicated load balancer adds a couple of headers into your request that is forwarded to your application. So you can tell if the certificate was provided, if it is validated or not. So you've got full information that is required in the application level if you choose to pick optional. Yeah. Let me try to call my application via dedicated load balancer. Right now, we should expect client certificates. Let's see. Nothing yet, so we are waiting. From my perspective, you might be wondering, oh, so why I've got one client certificate and I've got many applications, for example, Experience APIs. All of them do not expect to have the same client certificate. So we've got a couple of ways. I just think about a couple of them, as I've got similar cases on the projects. But of course, you may come with a different solution. You may choose to use the option, make this 2A TLS as an optional one, which means that you're on the application level or on API policy, you will be handling the information that is provided you in the header with information if it is validated or not. You may as well provide more certificate names here that will be dedicated, for example, to specific consumer that will require certificates or not. That requires this client certificate. And I think there's that's not all the possible solutions, but I think that the two that I just come to my mind at the moment. Let me just try call the API, and we received. Okay, it does not work. 400 bad requests. We've received this HTML bad request, no required SSL certificate. You need to bear that in mind. If you define your APIs, you cannot change it. It will always be this HTML page. You may provide this in your RAM services that someone can expect, or provide information, as some of the languages that are consuming the APIs do not handle that well. If they received 400 bad requests, one time in HTML and one time in JSON, as you know, your application using API key to reverse returns usually 400 errors as well as a JSON structure. So bear that in mind to document it well. That's one of the points as well for my last project.
Patryk, a quick question.
Yes.
Sorry to interrupt.
No. Yes.
Yeah, just confirming. Two-way SSL can be configured only in dedicated load balancer, right?
Yes. As we can configure this on the dedicated load balancer, shared load balancer does not have such capabilities. So we are bound to do it on DLB.
Okay. Thanks, Patryk.
No worries. No worries. Okay. So I've got this configured. I will show you how to add the certificate using Postman. I do not know. You need to do it if you're using different tool set. You need to probably find that way. I know it for Postman. So I will attach the certificate in order to make this application call work. So let me go to settings. And then we've got the certificates. And we can provide here news client certificate. Let me do this. We need to provide host name. It will be matching by the Postman tool. So if we will try to call calls under AP, PB, LB, any point DNS net, it will use this certificate. I pick PFX file, and I pick this P12 file. I provide my super secure password, mule1234, and let's click add. Okay, so that's all. Let's try to make the call out. Let's click send. And it works. Right now we provided this here. There are two things here to notice. Remember, I received many questions about this from the teams that are consuming our APIs. If we are configuring two-way TLS on our DLB, we just require public just certificate from their side. The consumer is the consumer. So, for example, Salesforce team has the private key, public key, and the certificate. They do not need to share this with us. And this is the responsibility of the third party to deliver us public certificate. They should generate their own certificates. So in real life, I would not generate this certificate. I would ask Salesforce, give me the certificate and upload it into your named application. That's all. But we need to know the differences here, as there is. It's kind of confusing, but it's good to understand it well. I just will make one small amendment. As I said, still not this one. We've got the application, and it's a mandatory. I make it optional for a moment, and I will show you this in the application. And I've got their HTTP wire logging, so I see all the requests that are coming in. We will see in a moment the headers. I want you to show them so you aware that you not only have information if the validation passed, but you can receive information with details of such certificate that was provided. Why I'm showing this you? As you may have a case, for example, application API that will have two ATLS, and you can imagine they will have more than one consumer, as this is some generic application, for example, some aggregator, and you may imagine that there is a consumer A, consumer B, and they will just represent them with a different certificate name. Let me just click send. And let's see if it worked. Yes. We've got here part. You can see successful verification, and you can see the CN name of the certificate, so you can see as well what certificate was provided in the request. So we've got a bunch of information that you can use for some sort of validation. Before I conclude this part, I just share with one tip that I found confusing at the beginning. We are here on the certificate side. You can see this client certificate, correct? That's Salesforce. But what if I would like to upload another one? Let's say MuleSoft one for my internal purposes. I do not have it anywhere over here. I just have remove, replace. Can I have multiple ones? Yes, we can. Yes, we can. If I go to this temp file, you can see it's begin and end. To provide more, just put at the end the new certificate and upload it again, and then you will have two client certificates. But as well, one thing to notice, they won't be the second certificate or more won't be displayed here. Only the name of the first certificate in a row is displayed. So that concludes this part of the 2A TLS. It worked. And I go for a moment with this URL mapping rules. This is straightforward, and I won't dig into that much details, but we can see here a couple of rules. It contains of three parts: input, target, output, and protocol. Input part is the part that I will just make it smaller to make it on one screen. So input path is the first path after the dedicated load balancer name. The target app, so this is the application name, how it is translated, the application name, target application name in the runtime manager. In my case, it was one-to-one. So I would expect that this application with that name exists there. And then we've got the output path. This means if we append something, we can imagine here, we've got there, and we could, for example, provide something extra, some extra path added to our application to hide it from here. But I will just show you this in a moment. This is something that is appended to your application URI. And the protocol. Protocols are four. And this is something that I will present you. There is HTTP, so we can translate HTTPS to HTTP, HTTPS into HTTPS. We've got as well WebSockets and secured WebSockets. And those WebSockets are available only through dedicated load balancer. You cannot use it using shared load balancer. If you have WebSocket case, dedicated load balancer, nothing else. Otherwise, it won't work. In the Cloud Hub environment, of course, it won't work. You know, I will play with my API. Just one small remark. How the rules are invoked, in what order? From top to bottom. So always begin with the most specific ones to most generic one. Here I've got the most specific generic one at the beginning, so you can imagine everything goes into this URL mapping rule, as it's too specific, too generic. So I would need to reorder this actually to make it work. And one small thing, this app, it's actually whatever you like. This is a variable placeholder. It will put this value into this app, and we can refer to those variable, this variable and others in this API. Usually, we've got the patterns on the in real life project on the Cloud Hub. Name of the API, it needs to be Word y Unix. So we usually add prepared company name and append the environment. So you can imagine you can enable a couple of more variables, for example, and use this to construct your API name. So you can see that the environment is dynamic, so you can pick whatever it is, and the application name that is here. we usually do this. Let me just show you this on the real life. Like, we will change how we involve our get ambassadors operation. So first of all, I will change the name from app up to application, so you are aware that it's completely up to you. You should not look for what this app mean. Are there anything else? You would define the names. So that's that I would like to tell you. So we usually hide information that something is API, experience API. We usually define them dedicated load balancer usually for experience API. I know that my API is that way, so that way I restrict only access to experience APIs. So the application, if I provide something like this, this will be then we will be appending XAPI. So it will be like double XAPI. It does not work. I need to remove this from my call. And I said we've got prefixes with the customers. I do not want to expose this. My customer knows what my customer's name is, so I remove it. That way, I remove this from my actual call. Exactly. I hope that's clear. And we may expect, for example, that's just the case. I usually expose the API version to customers, but we can imagine that customer only expect the most recent version. Let's remove this. Plain and simple. But my application requires this. How to do this? We will use output path that will be appended to the call. Let's done editing. Double apply changes. One thing that I've seen issue with, if you remember to add at the end of the input a slash, otherwise you will see some peculiar error. I do not know why. You need to just put it, otherwise it won't work. That's something that you can sometimes just forget it. You are typing, forget slash, and suddenly it does not work. Let's see if it's already there. Probably not yet. Okay. In the meantime, while we are waiting for this, as it is not yet deployed, as we received 504. Send, begin. Let's go back to this API role. And again. Yeah, and as you can see, right now, it works. So we hide information about the prefix with the customer, prefix with the environment, and prefix with the application. Then we've got this nicely tidy URI for the customer. This is pretty powerful stuff. You can play with it along and decide up to the customer's needs, expectation, how the URIs could look like. That concludes this part related to TLS. I will just go for a moment to the slide with WebSockets, as I've got more demonstrative walkthrough for this. But let me tell what WebSockets are. WebSockets are a protocol that is built on top of TCP. And this is a protocol that allows you to have full duplex communication channels. In other way means, what does it mean? You can, using one connection, TCP connection, to call to the consumer, send the message back to consumer, and the consumer can send you request using same single channel. It's usually useful for experience APIs. And case, you may imagine that you have, for example, experience APIs for mobile devices. This is the perfect place to have WebSockets when we, for example, require some callbacks. Why? As for it, we do not we cannot configure callbacks on mobile devices as there is an issue with IP addresses. It does not work just like that. So we need to have WebSocket. And you can imagine, for example, you've got the system API that works on the WebSocket basis. So you can receive pretty quickly on the one channel requests. You can send requests and receive responses from the third party and propagate it to all the applications in your API network. So these are two cases where we usually can have WebSockets. This is MuleSoft introduced the WebSocket Connector, I believe, 1 year, maybe 1.5 years ago, and we can now play with it. Of course, I mentioned this. WebSockets on the endpoint platform works only when you have dedicated load balancer in context of Cloud Hub. Of course, on the on-premise solutions, you should be able to use it as you are the owner of the infrastructure. So let me just show you the case when we've got chat application that is enabled for on the Experience API level. Let me just show you the application and go for pretty quickly. It does not work yet, but it will work soon. So we've got global where we will provide some configuration. As I do not have a separate server, I've provided here a template. So the web page is exposed here via my API. But in real world scenarios, I would expect that we will have this on the separate server calling our API. But we are working in some demo environment, that way we've got it embedded. Let me just open this index HTML page. This is straightforward web page. I will show you this up in a moment. It's, let me copy it to make it bigger. Of course, it depends on the programming languages or something. I won't dig into the details and explain how to consume this using JavaScript, as this is the case. We are MuleSoft developers. But just to tell you what will be happening. My chat will connect to the WebSocket. WebSocket will be exposed under WebSocket protocol. It will be on the local host. We will be connecting to port 8091. Why 8091? As it's not secured, WS. And then we've got the base path. WS messages. You will see how I set up it is in a moment. Then we've got part when we're waiting for messages. So I will waiting for your messages actually when we will play this on the on our actual environment. So we will be it listens for new events, new chat messages from the users. Then we've got the part that is responsible for sending my message from the form that has some just basic information, name and the message. So it will send this to our WebSocket, and this will be propagated to other chat users. Plain and simple. So we've got here just the web page. First, in order to work, we need to, in order to make this the web page work, we need to create HTTP listener config. You saw that it was on 8091. Actually, I prepared this to DLB configuration. One tip: you may provide here 8091, or you can provide variable that is provided by MuleSoft. So you do not need to type this variable in your properties file. So if you do not need to define this, it's http.private.port, and it will be value 8091. If you pick HTTPS, 1992, but I will use HTTP value. Let me click OK. Just plain configuration is good enough. Let me just pick here the listener. Listener, and let's see if it works quickly. I will open new web page so we can see what is happening here. Actually, first we run this application locally, and then once we're ready, we deploy this to endpoint platform, and we use the capabilities of dedicated load balancer to transfer the traffic. And I show you how to do transformation from secure protocol into insecure within the VPC. As DLB provides this security level, that's why we can translate from HTTPS into HTTP, as within the VPC are we pretty secure. Okay, let me refresh the page. Okay, I see, you can see it's not fancy, just a pretty straightforward chat that I wrote, and we will be typing messages. Currently, we are not even connected, as I received that I cannot connect to my socket, WebSocket, as it does not work yet. It's not configured. Let's do it. You need to go to Add Modules. I've got already here WebSocket, but if you do not, you need to search this in Exchange. So let me just drag it. I drag it, and let me configure this WebSocket. You remember that the WebSocket are on top of HTTP TCP traffic? If so, you won't get surprised by this. Check this out. Let me just do the WebSocket config. It's for connectivity, and we would like to do the server stuff. We would like to serve the WebSocket, so I click Server Settings. I provide the basic path. I usually add WS to the base path to distinguish APIs from HTTP APIs from WebSockets. And whoa, what this is? Listener config? Yeah, it's attached actually HTTP listener configuration, as this is working on top of TCP. That's why it's here. Configuration is straightforward. Nothing else you need to provide. Just OK, click OK. And right now we need to expose our API. What we've got in the WebSocket. We've got here a bunch of operations. A couple of them is for listening purposes, or with the on prefix, on new inbound connection, on new message, on outbound message, etc. And we will choose on new inbound message. Why message, not connection? The on inbound connection is initiated once we connect to WebSocket. But we are interested in the message that whereas I would like to receive messages from you on the chat. So I will use new message. Apart from this, we've got sending, broadcasting, closing socket, subscribing goes, app subscribing. We can build massive scenarios using this. You can imagine that we can subscribe, the chat was plain and simple, yeah? But we can imagine that we've got the rooms. Then we've got some, we would use subscribing groups to some chats, unsubscribing from different groups. For example, I would like to leave different group and go to the other ones. So this is done by this. Let's configure me this new inbound message. Let's do the path. I will add messages. Nothing else needs to, there is one need to configure. This is a pro tip, I would say, as I was struggling with this for some moment. We need to provide MIME type, otherwise it will be, just sending as a string. I know that I will be consuming JSON, so we need to provide this MIME type. Do not forget this. Otherwise, you will be struggling with this. Let me just add the logger, so you will see the messages that we are sending, payload. Let me just start the application. We are nearly there. I'm so excited with this. Let's see if it will work. I will be just refreshing this web page. Right now, we will be exposing WebSocket, so I should not have this failed message. If we have, something went wrong. Let's see if it will go smoothly. Okay, we connected to the WebSocket. Great. So let me send a message. Hello. This is just locally happening. And you can see that there is new entry. It received it. So our WebSocket connectivity works. Okay, so I received the message. You see the structure. It's just a simple name and the message. Two just plain variables. Let me just send this to the to other chat members. So I will wait for this transform message. Oh, okay. I change this to JSON, and I provide here a message. Actually, guys, there is no constraint of the structure. I know that I put message as I've done the implementation of the chat. We need to, of course, have here the structure that the consumer expects. That's just small work, small thing to know. And let me do some simple HTML marks. At the beginning, we'll provide the payload name, so the user, and the colon, and here the message, payload.message. Great. And we need to send it. The difference, if I would use send, I will send the message back to the someone who sent me the message, as this is working on the one wire. I need to send it to all of you, so I will use the broadcast. Of course, we can have these groups down below, but we won't go there. It's for having subscription groups, but we are working with simple case. But how broadcast knows where to send it? We need to provide the path name on which people are listening. We know that we are listening on ws/messages. That way, it will send it to everyone who is connected to this path. Correct? Let me run this locally. It should work right now like a charm. So I will be receiving my messages. And in the moment, we will deploy this on the DLB, which is a fairly straightforward stuff. Okay, let me refresh the page and set it changed. Yep, you can see I received my message. If I do this many times, it's sent from the server. Okay, but I've been playing locally. I would like to deploy this to Cloud Hub. So what we need to do, we've got a couple of stuff. First, we need to configure the mapping rules. As you remember, I did not have any that is for WebSockets. So let me go to load balancer, to default dedicated load balancer, and we need to add new rule. Let me just add it. Okay, we will use hard-coded path to make it work smoother, but I can imagine that we would you could provide some generic path namings, but I will use that way. We need to configure two rules, one for WebSocket and one for our MuleSoft application. So the chat, as you remember, actually you do not know it yet, but it's the application called app-chat.eapi. The outbound path is this, the default one, and we've got this WS. Add rule. Add a new one. For my MuleSoft application, I will just call it MuleSoft. Still hard-coded, but you could provide this separately. And that's default ones, add rule. Why I added this HTTP? You know, I needed to add this as I exposed the web page. If I would have just WebSocket, this one would not be needed. Only this. Okay, in a moment, the changes will be applied. So right now, let me construct the URI. You remember that in my application, I've got a hard-coded local host, correct? But we need to change it. So let me tell you how to do it. Actually, here is a much bigger view, so I will use this one. So first of all, my load balancer is exposing on secure sockets. So HTTPS is exposed by DLB, and if so, then WebSocket is as well secured. So I provide WSS. Remember, that's a fairly mistake if we configure HTTPS at the beginning of load balancer. Then we need to provide this load balancer name. So no localhost longer and no ports it's needed. Yes. And you remember that we've got the path with just chat prefix that will match our application name. The rest is the same. So let me just make it. Is it in manual? Okay. So I need the prefix that will match the application name, and here the DLB URI. And remember, WebSocket secured, as we are exposing DLBs. Of course, it could be WS or just HTTP if you would just make this HTTP only. Okay, it works. So let me go back to my application. I've got this chat. Let me copy it into the application. What we need to do is to deploy this application to the server. Let me do this. Endpoint platform, deploy to Cloud Hub. Okay, let's deploy it. It should as well happen pretty quickly, as it's a very straightforward application. Close the window. Let's go to the applications to see API if it is loading. Okay, let me copy it. You remember, we exposed this, we exposed our application. It's not, let me just, sorry, let me make it bigger. We provided the mapping rule on our load balancer using the MuleSoft. That's where we know that it will go to the application. Our application. Let me just hit enter. It's not yet deployed. Let's wait a second, and it should work. I expected that it will happen quicker, but let's give it a minute.
Hi, Patrick.
Yes, sorry,
Yeah, should I ask the question towards the end then?
Sorry, can you say that again?
Yeah, should I ask the question towards the end, or are you ready to take it now? We have a couple of questions. One is from dedicated load balancer.
It's deployed. So straight after this, as we are nearly towards the end.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
No, yeah.
Thank you. Okay. Not this web page. Let me copy the URI. So, of course, we are secured with self-signed certificates. So let me just proceed to unsave URI. I got my chat. Okay. I will tap it to you so we can play with it and see if it is working actually. Let me do this in the chat window. If you receive the warning, it's just self-signed certificate. Let me just say, hi everyone. Let's see if you can see the message. Let's play with it. Anyone? How are you today? I'm fine. Oh, I hope it works, as no one yet. Oh yes, hello, John. Yeah, I like how easy it is to set up WebSockets, and I see a couple of scenarios where we could actually use this in our APIs. I think that it gives a massive performance benefit once we do not need to re-establish the connectivity. I am fine, thanks. Of course, yeah, the chat is pretty straightforward, but it's the best and easiest way to show you the capabilities of platform. As I said, it's pretty straightforward. Okay, that concludes my part. I will publish the source code on my GitHub account. I will share it with Tima and John so that they can embed it or share it in whatever way you use in your meetup group. Okay, that concludes my part. I hope you enjoy it, and I'm open for your questions.
Yeah, so we have a question from Victor. How to switch from dedicated load balancer to shared load balancer without changing the API code?
Moving it back from DLB to a short load balancer. Of course, it's if we expose the port numbers as not hard-coded way. So, for example, we use some variable that we feed into. Then we can configure it from runtime manager, for example. We can set their value 8081 instead of 8091. But then you won't need to do the massive changes in your application. As this change actually, it's a bigger change on the consumer side, as the URL they've got different. On our side, it's just port.
We have one more question from Prabhakaran. Can we use our own load balancer in CloudHub?
Not in CloudHub. You can decide to use something outside, which is deployed in the cloud, and do the rules on your own. For example, using Amazon AWS application load balancer. So you could, but not in the endpoint platform, just some outside component.
Okay. One more question. If it's MuleSoft provided, what's the max payload size and TPS allowed?
The payload size, I'm not sure. I'm not aware of those some requirements there for this, so I would need to check this. The dedicated load balancer is more capable. It's we can configure performance by getting more workers capabilities to DLB. That's the only thing that I think no. But no, I do not know nothing about the request limit, request size limit.
Okay. Yeah. So that's all.
Oh, TPS allowed. Transactions per second. That's I haven't heard. Sorry. The transactions per second. It depends on the. That's what I said. Based on the number of clouds that you provision, cores, workers. So more workers, better TPS. That's only from this. So you can have up to 8 workers handling your request. Based on this, you can have your TPS computed, transactions per second. And the shared load balancer have only 100. Oh, sorry, I thought I'm sharing the screen still, that I was showing my screen. We've got the workers defined in the load balancer. So based on this, it depends how many transactions per second it can handle.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks, Patryk. So I think that's all we have. from the Q&A session. I think we can go for the quiz now. I'll share my screen. I hope my screen is visible.
Yes, it is.
Yes. So before we start the quiz, there are a few guidelines that we'd like to share. For anyone in the event who has won the trivia quiz or voucher in the last 30 days, please refrain from participating because let's give chances to other people who haven't won. Yeah. So let's and this time I haven't created Kahoot, so we'll be sharing the question on the screen. We have got 3 questions, and you guys can share the answer on baby chat. So whoever answers first is the winner. Yeah. So I'll be sharing my first question now, and you guys can share the answers in the chat. Yeah, I think John has already drawn a line, a separator. Yeah, so I'm sharing my question. Yeah, so the first question. Yes, we're getting answers. Okay. Oh my God. I have no one to that.
Yeah, I think. Hi, Patrick. Yeah, John. So I think A is the answer, right? So
Yeah,
I
the
think it's
default HTTP.
Shyam Raj Prasad. Yep, it's 8081, guys. So I
Yeah,
think,
8082 would be for HTTPS, and 1891 would be used for. It's not the default one. It's for a dedicated load balancer and within, and 80 is for used for shared load balancer.
So it's Shyam. Yes, congrats, Shyam. Yes, Shyam, maybe you can, put in your email ID in the chat. So we'll get back to you towards the end of the session. Yeah, maybe we can go to the second question. Before that, let me draw. Yep. Yes, so I think everyone has answered it right, but we can select only one. So it's Prabhakaran Satyamurthy. Yeah, so the answer is true. DLB is located within VPC, so the answer is true. So congrats, Prabhakaran. Congrats. And maybe after I draw the separator, we can go to the third question. Yep. So the answer is actually A. It is mule worker. It's actually, comes with the prefix mule worker. So I think the answer is
Which one you are referring to? Can you say it again?
which prefix allowed to connect to application using its private IP. So it's mule worker, right? Mule worker.
Internal.
It's mule worker internal.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yes.
Sorry.
Sorry if I.
Yeah. So that's something. Sorry from my side. So I think the first one goes to Kalyana Krishna Vangapadu. Yes. No. It's Aman. Aman. Sorry about that. Aman is the first one. So congrats, Aman. So I think Aman is the one. So B is the answer. Mule worker internal. Yep. So all the 3 winners. So if you can just please put in your email IDs in the chats. We'll get back to you towards the end. So as just like what Fatima said, you guys can enroll for a training course of your choice, and towards the end of the course, you'll be getting a voucher with which you can take the exam. Yeah. Thank you, everyone. Thank you all for participating. But unfortunately, we can give to only 3 of them. So that's it. Yeah. Fatima, maybe you can take on from here. Thank you, guys. Yeah.
Thanks, John. So as John said, please share your email IDs. And finally, so I hope you guys got most out of the session. Please feel free to fill the post meetup feedback form, and you'll be getting via mail, and this will definitely help us to improve and grow. So reminding you all again to contribute to the feedback. Yeah. Thank you guys, and thank you, Patryk, for your time.
Thanks for the invitation. It was a really enjoyable session.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, guys. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Have a good weekend.
Cheers, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you all.